Chair. I will be presiding over this public hearing this evening. Next to me is my fellow Commissioner Brian Berry. The charter plan of the district was amended by the voters in St. Louis City and St. Louis County at a general election on November 7th, year 2000, and established the Rate Commission. The purpose of the Rate Commission is to review and make recommendations to MSD Board of Trustees regarding changes in wastewater rates, stormwater rates, and tax rates proposed by MSD staff. The Rate Commission seeks to ensure that MSD ratepayers and the public in general have a voice in MSD's rate setting process. That's why we're here tonight. Per the charter plan, the Rate Commission is composed of 15 member organizations who collectively represents the broadest possible cross-section of MSD customers and community it serves. Rate Commission members, organizations, I just remember this thing's starting to get hard to read. Okay, now we're good. Rate Commission member organizations are selected by MSD Board of Trustees through a public self-nomination and selection process set forth in the charter. Each member organization serves a 6-year term and appoints an individual to represent the organization on the Rate Commission. Per the voter-approved changes made to MSD's charter in 2000, the Board of Trustees will select member organizations so as to ensure a fair representation of all users of the district services. And that's in quotes. Specifically, Rate Commission member organizations shall represent commercial and industrial users, residential users, and other organizations interested in the operation of the district, including, by way of example, but not by way of limitation, organizations focusing on environmental issues, labor issues, social economic issues, community neighborhood organizations, and other nonprofit organizations. For a list of the individual Rate Commissioners and the organizations they represent, please visit the Rate Commission section of MSD's website at www.msdprojectclear.org. The Rate Commission received a rate change notice from MSD staff on March 24th, 2023 for wastewater rates and stormwater rates and taxes. Per the charter plan, the Rate Commission must issue its report on the proposed rate change notice to MSD's Board of Trustees on or before September 5th, 2023. So, the Commission's kind of under a deadline here. The Rate Commission adopted operational rules already and procedural schedule to conduct its proceedings in a timely manner and with procedural fairness to all parties. Since the Rate Commission notice was received on March 24th, 2023, the Rate Commission has received many testimonies from MSD staff and rate consultants employed by the Rate Commission to evaluate MSD's staff proposal. The parties have also engaged in discovery requests. Documentation of these activities is listed on the Rate Commission section of MSD's website, again at www.msdprojectclear.org. Tonight's public hearing is one of 14 on the record sessions planned for or between June 21st, 2023 and August 7th, 2023. Any ratepayer who wishes to be heard on the proposed rate change may testify or participate in any of these public hearings, public sessions. The public hearings are publicly noticed via postings to the Rate Commission section of MSD's website. Again, www.msdprojectclear.org. These postings contain the time, date, and location of each of the public hearings. As hearings are added to the schedule, the same information will be added to the postings. Public hearings are held for the purpose of permitting MSD staff to present its wastewater and stormwater rate change proposal to the general public and to permit the general public the opportunity to ask questions or make comments. I know this is getting long, but I'll be done in a few minutes. Those unable to or not wishing to provide comments at a public hearing may provide feedback to the Rate Commission via phone Again, email address is ratecommission@ahcconsulting.com. A card with this contact information is available as you come in. This card looks like this. It's available at the sign in front. Alternately, staff representing the Rate Commission, who I will ask to identify themselves shortly, will also be able to provide that information. Further information on how to provide feedback outside of the public hearings is listed on the Rate Commissioner section of MSD's website, again, at www.msdprojectcleared.org. Our next step tonight is a presentation by MSD staff, followed by a public comment period. Tonight's presenter is Brian Holzer, MSD CEO and Executive Director. Before we begin the presentation, I ask that we all observe the following housekeeping rules. Please hold all questions until the comment period after the presentation. If you wish to present testimony or if you expect to have any questions or comments, please sign in at the door by which you entered the room. Speakers will be called upon in the order they have signed up, and each speaker should identify themselves and any organization they represent. While not a requirement, we ask that those that are speaking to state their name and address so that we may ensure that the associated comments in the record with the correct speaker. If you are representing an organization, please provide information about your organization. If speakers wish to remain anonymous, in whole or in part, we respect those wishes as well. Each speaker may have a maximum of 10 minutes to speak regarding the proposed rate change. As the presiding officer, I may limit or expand speaking time as deemed necessary. If you have further questions regarding bathrooms or any other logistics, staff representing the Rate Commission, staff, please raise your hand that might be able to help. Anybody has any questions?
Yeah, on the sides of the room.
Okay. Those folks can help you if you have any questions. Finally, if you have not already done so, please silence your cell phones. Are there any questions regarding procedures for this evening? Seeing none, I'll ask Mr. Holzer to come up and begin his presentation.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you, Commissioner Jurls. Again, I'm Brian Holster. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of MSD. Before I start, I want to have everybody who is an MSD staff employee raise their hands. So they are here. If there's something not covered tonight in the presentation, a project-specific type issue or a billing type issue, you can see these folks. They're here to answer those questions. I won't be talking about, obviously, specific problems in this, but they're here afterwards in case there's something that's not covered in tonight's presentation having to do with current services. So there's three things I'm going to talk about tonight. Here we go. One, I'm going to give you a little background on MSD, how we got here, why we exist, what our responsibilities are. Then I'm going to talk about the rate proposal and exactly what work is getting done and why it is getting done and why we're offering these proposals to the voters. And then third, the biggest part of it, I'm going to go through the results of the rate proposals and what the financial impact would be depending on how the voters decide for us to proceed. And I'll go through those in detail. First of all, we have something called TL2 systems. It's important to remember that MSD provides two major services. One is wastewater. We collect the wastewater as soon as it leaves out of your lateral, transport it, pump it, treat it, and discharge it into local creeks and streams. The public pays for that through your monthly MSD bill. The second service has to do with stormwater. So those are paid through property taxes. There's three services you heard me talk about. One is regulatory. We serve as a regulator to make sure that we reduce the amount of pollutants and stormwater runoff that enters the environment. We operate and maintain the storm sewers, inlets, and manholes, not creeks and streams, the sewers themselves. And then finally, we have the ability to help address the flooding and erosion problems that have continuously affected the area and are starting to affect it in a little different way because of climate change. So really quick, Project Clear protects, the purpose of MSD Project Clear is to protect the public health, safety, and water environment by responsibly managing 2 programs with separate funding sources. Again, wastewater is that monthly bill, and I forgot to say the stormwater is on your property tax at the end of the year. One for wastewater and one for stormwater. The fundings are different in these two, and they're starting to diverge, and so therefore there's going to be 2 proposals I'm going to talk about that's on the ballot, one for wastewater and one for stormwater. They're going to be completely different. Talking about the services in wastewater, includes the cleaning and repair of the existing wastewater system, something which had been causing issues, complying with all environmental regulations, and also major new improvements. The capital program, which is the largest piece of the wastewater proposal, is mandated by an agreement based on a lawsuit that we received from the Department of Justice and EPA, setting a schedule for us to come in compliance with the Clean Water Act. It's not just St. Louis, over 200 other communities had these kind of lawsuits. It's a strategy the federal government took to make sure there was a date certain that everybody would come in compliance with the Clean Water Act. MSD has always been working towards these issues. What has changed is the schedule. It is a court-approved schedule to complete the work. For instance, the capital work that's in the rate proposal for the next 4 years, 98% of the work being proposed is mandated by the consent decree agreement or is required by other regulatory schedules from the federal government. Stormwater is a little bit different. So there's 3 things we can do. One is clean and repair the existing storm sewers, those are the manholes, the inlets, the storm sewers, the things you see in the populated areas. We have owned those. But until 2016, we were not receiving revenues to operate and maintain them all. We owned them, but no revenues to maintain them. So everything inside 270, essentially, we could operate and maintain to some degree. Everything outside 270 we owned, but nobody had ever given MSD any revenues to operate and maintain them. Currently, we have funding to do that based on a voter approval of property tax that went in place in 2016. So we now can provide that service. Compliance with environmental regulations, there's been some form of a 2-cent property tax. It's been in place since MSD was formed in 1954. It allows us to serve kind of like as a building permit entity to make sure that people follow appropriate rules to decrease the amount of pollutants and stormwater runoff that enters the creeks and streams. Finally, the last service, which we don't have funding for district-wide, which we can provide, we're talking about improvements that don't involve MSD's assets, and that has to do funding for stormwater, creek erosion, and flooding. MSD does not have a district-wide resource. We last put something in front of the voters in 2019. They'll take care of those kind of issues. The voters said no. We are coming back with some revisions based on input from the public we've gotten. We still would like to be considered for that district-wide service. I'm going to go over what that proposal looks like so the voters can decide whether or not we should provide that service district-wide. Wastewater system improvements, MSD's in the midst. It's a 3-decade agreement. Originally we had a 23-year agreement to be done by 2034. Based on some affordability issues that we presented to the EPA, they've extended that through 2039, that we have to get all the improvements done on the wastewater side. The current value of the proposal is $7.2 billion in 2023 dollars. You may have heard different numbers. We put numbers based on dollars at the time. So when we signed the agreement in 2011, based on 2010 dollars, it was $4.7 billion. 2021, it was $6.1 billion. And then because of, as everybody knows, what's happened to the economy the last 2 or 3 years prior to this rate proposal, we repriced the value of the program based on the recent inflation, and that's where you come to the $7.2 billion. We have not added anything to the project, and the project's currently on budget and schedule. It's just when we're pricing the project. Right now, that number now is in 2023 dollars. Goals. One is to reduce the backups in the homes. and the overflows in the environment. That's the biggest thing we've got. So when the stormwater was coming in, it was causing homes to back up, and we get into the sanitary system, or based on sometimes prior to MSD being in existence, to prevent that from happening, holes were put into the system, so when rain came down, it would discharge the creeks and streams instead of backing up homes. Though all of those have to be taken care of. That will improve the water quality, and it will bring us into compliance with the Clean Water Act. How do we do that? One is removing stormwater out of the wastewater system where it shouldn't be. In St. Louis, one of the big issues we had at some time in the past, a lot of homes were built with the stormwater leaders coming off the roof going into the sanitary laterals. That was causing people to back themselves up, to flood the system. There was also surcharging the system, so it dumped into the environment. We've done a lot of work to try and remove as many of those, as well as some oddball inlets that were connected to the wrong sewer, and we've made a lot of progress taking care of that. We are increasing the capacity, keeping in mind a lot of the changes that are happening because of climate change. Fortunately, the improvements we've been making on the wastewater system can, as a rule, accommodate those on the wastewater system, and then eliminate the points where it's going into the river. So as you can imagine, we have to take water out of the system, make some system improvements to make them bigger, and make sure these points where discharges were going into creeks and streams instead of for treatment, eliminate those. Those are illegal. That's the biggest driver on the system. What progress we've made is here. Those overflows I was talking about, there are holes in the system to discharge wastewater to the creeks and streams. When it rains heavily, we've eliminated 84% of those. We started at the start of the consent decree with about 230 of them. We've eliminated 84 of those overflows. Building backups are down 25%. We are experiencing something at MSD with regard to the problem we were initially trying to take care of, which is stormwater getting in that shouldn't be in there. We've actually done much better than 25%. What has taken over is a lot of the local flooding that's being caused by climate change. That's obviously when homes flood and areas flood, the sewer system floods, and that's causing some of those additional basement backups. So right now we started or are underway 650 different projects since 2012 on the wastewater side. Stormwater is a little different. We keep getting reported a rising number of stormwater issues for a lot of reasons. It's fueled in some cases by people becoming more aware that we are trying to get some funding. Folks usually won't report problems to us. If they report and we tell them MSD has no funding, they get tired of reporting. Some of those are reporting more are being caused by climate change. The problems are already more than the natural system or the stormwater systems can handle. They're set for what is a basic storm in the past. They're not set for the 100 and 500-year storms we've been getting. To give you an idea of what that is, we identified about $700 million worth of storms prior to these really different storms coming up, which are large 100 and 500-year storms, either covering the area or popping up in isolated locations. Those are some additional issues that we have to figure out how to address. This is just a visual description of what they are for the problems for stormwater. There's flooding, whatever that means. There's flooding there for a lot of reasons. Sometimes it's been flooding just because that's the way the area was built. And there wasn't good drainage put in. Some of it's being caused by the additional storms. And then another big one, especially in areas where there isn't flooding, but we have the additional stormwater, we're talking about creek erosion. That creek erosion can erode the creek, eat properties up, eat homes up, in some cases threaten homes. They're located along creeks and streams. So where are the problems? These are 4 watersheds that you see in our service area. Beside those are the number of problems we know about. What I really want to point out is if you see the pink area, that area has some small taxing districts that are a legacy from the 1960s where we're doing a small amount of stormwater work because we're collecting a separate tax. What we have found is if you have money to solve problems, people are more willing to tell you there's a problem because there's a chance to get it fixed. You look at some of the other areas, the orange area to the north, the whatever that color is to the upper left. We've had a lot of people tell us they have problems over and over, and we just said there's nothing we can do because we don't have any revenues. There is no money coming in to solve those types of issues. What we suspect is once you start having funding, our experience is people will start letting us know about more issues. We suspect that's where this will go. The proposal itself, I'll go to the Rate Commission. I'm not going to go over this. Commissioner Jurls went over some of this, but describing the Rate Commission, when it went into place, what its organization looks like. The big thing is they are here to review MSD's proposal. The whole proposal process looks like this. So starting in the summer of 2022, MSD staff looked at everything that's going on and decided what are we going to present to the Rate Commission. We usually present a rate proposal every 4 years. The main reason for that is we have a long wastewater program that now ends in 2039, but every 4 years we kind of double check in with the Rate Commission. Say, okay, we got funding for the past 4 years, now we got funding for the next 4 years, here's where we stand from the previous 4 years, here's our calculations. We now need to determine, are we going to do this by borrowing some money? Are we going to do it by just paying cash? How are we going to pay for this? It's not optional as to whether or not we do the work. The work's been mandated by a federal judge and the federal government. The question is, how do we pay for it? That question comes every 4 years. Now, what doesn't always come is a question about stormwater. Again, we tried 4 years ago. We're going to try again this year to put another proposal out and see what the public thinks of this. And that's to provide creek erosion and flooding and flood revenues to take care of flooding problems throughout the entire district. Now, I mentioned both of those. So put that proposal together. We presented it to them in March. The Rate Commission will take a look at staff's proposal and submit it to our Board of Trustees in September. The Board of Trustees will review the recommendations of the Rate Commission and decide how to move forward and what, if anything, should go on the April 2024 ballot. So if I go to the third or the right-hand side, again, I explained this. There's two proposals. On the wastewater side, how do you want to pay for the next 4 years? We have to do the work, but the question is, how do you want to move forward and pay for it? Do you want to borrow money, which makes it cost less now, but you have debt service later? And there's a new stormwater service. Do you want us to provide this or not? Those will be the two questions. So the details of the rate proposal. On the stormwater side, what we've done in this rate proposal, to be equitable, we want to make sure we properly divide up where the revenues come in. So we've taken a look at the impervious area on the properties. Residential customers represent 57% of the impervious area in our district. The impervious area being rooftops, driveways, sidewalks, places where water doesn't soak into the ground. So we're making sure the revenues, 57%, come from those residential customers. The balance of 43% comes from the non-residential customers. The reason it's important to understand the difference is the way we collect revenues from those two classes of customers are a little bit different. I'll go through those right now. For the residential customers, to collect that amount of money, rate change proposals based on the median assessed value in our service area of $176,000 for a home. If your home's valued at $176,000, the new stormwater rate would be $25 a year. The rate zero is 7.45 cents per $100 valuation. That amount is what our surveying says. That's the amount 50% of the public's willing to spend to provide a district-wide service. One of the things to understand about this, so I'm talking about service for folks who have never had it before, and in generalities that's outside of 270. For instance, here in Bridgeton, this service I'm talking about, the city of Bridgeton has never received from MSD. So this will be a brand new charge. There's other of you who live in between 270 and the city boundaries. As I mentioned before, there's some old sub-districts that early on in the district's existence in the 1960s. They were set up, they were collecting revenues anywhere from 5.5 cents to 10.5 cents, to 8.5 cents to provide this same service. If this fails, right now the plan is to leave those in place and continue providing the service in those areas between 270 and the city boundaries. If this passes, the plan is to set those rates, those existing tax rates in the small areas to zero. So you'll basically replace one for the other. Some folks might pay a little bit more per year, some might pay a little bit less for the same service. For non-residential customers to pick up their 43%, if you back calculate the impervious area, we're going to charge those customers $1.05 per 1,000 square feet of impervious area per month. That's what their charge will be. So in this scenario, for the residential customers, it will be on your property tax. For the non-residential customers, it will be a monthly bill that will go to the non-residential customers. So what's it look like? Right now, as I indicated before, we have about $700 million worth of problems we've identified prior to, especially the big storms that started this past summer. Also, for the last 10 plus years, we've had a lot of locations where little pop-up 100 and 500-year storms will come in and just inundate areas. So we know those are more problems beyond the $700 million in problems that we've identified. We tried to set up the expenditures to try and address at least the start of everything. So first of all, MSD is going to take 50% of the revenues, which are about $34 million that comes out of this stormwater expenditure, and we're going to take all the problems we know of and we use a benefit cost analysis. So we take what's the benefit of a project. Are we going to keep a house from falling in the creek? Are we going to keep a yard from being eroded? What is the erosion issues? We add up all those points. We divide it by the cost to do the project, end up with a benefit cost ratio. Then district-wide, we will simply start from the top of the list and do the ones that are most cost effective and work our way down this list. That's the plan right now, and what we plan on doing with 50% of the funds. 30% of the funds will go to the individual municipalities based on population for them to solve whatever stormwater problem they think is most important. We've tried this in some of those small taxing districts I mentioned. It's a very good way, kind of the bigger versus the smaller problems. It makes money available to individual municipalities to take care of stormwater problems that they view as being the most important at the highest priority. Next, 10% will go to, and I'm using a federal term here, not the term the state uses, 10% will go to an environmental justice fund for projects in environmental justice areas. So the way that is defined, and this comes from information provided to the state of Missouri, they use that often to determine how they'll distribute grants. It's North City, North County heading west, and a part of South County, just south of the city. Those are justified as environmental justice areas. We're going to take 10% of the revenues, and we're going to apply that same benefit cost analysis to projects only in those areas. And it'll allow us to address areas that the state has determined low income or traditionally underserved. It'll allow us to accelerate those projects. And then finally, there's 10% of the projects are going to a regional advisory committee. Right now, our discussions have been with the municipal league. They consist primarily, except for the city of St. Louis, who we'd add in, elected officials from all the areas. What's being missed? What is the service that really needs to get done? Because it's recent, there's a couple things we talked about. Should we be providing money for municipalities to provide them funding to match or help out in getting people out of floodplains? We've got a lot of folks who live in floodplains, and when we get heavy rains, they get flooded. We're not going to engineer our way out of it. Do we want to buy them out? Do we want to get some kind of stormwater insurance program? Or do we want to do something else, some other stormwater problem? It's the kind of thing where we want to get public input, making kind of a regional policy decision. What's the way to go with the balance of that 10% of the funding? On wastewater, it's our regular operations. Our operations costs are about 30% of our annual wastewater budget. The balance is either the debt service or the cost to build the projects required by our consent decree. Through to date, as of the end, when we reach the end of 2024 fiscal year, we will have spent $3.1 billion towards the total completion. The amount in this proposal is about $1.7 billion, and then there leaves from 2028 through 2039 about $2.4 billion. That will have us complete everything that's in the consent decree. And again, that's one of the reasons we come back every 4 years to talk to the Rate Commission. We will provide 2 ways of doing this. We do have an alternative that would require the public to approve an additional $700 million of bonding authority. I'm gonna show you what that looks like for rates. The other option the public has is, I don't want to borrow money anymore. I want to just pay for it now. And therefore, there is that one set up. Remember, we have to do the work. It's part of a federal consent decree, a federal judgment. The question is, how are we gonna pay for it? And for wastewater, that's the proposition that we put in front of the voters. So for wastewater, if you take a look at the left-hand side, this is what will happen to the average customer. Nobody's rate is probably $61.04, or will be $61.04. For the average customer, what you are billed for is what goes down the drain during the winter months. So the proposal, if bonding is approved, are the increases you see on the left-hand side. On the first year, 7%, the second year, 7.6%, the third year, 7.5%, and the final year, 6.6%. That's if it is approved for the next 4-year program to provide additional bonding authority to complete that program. On the right-hand side is if you say no, and you can imagine this is just like buying a car. You buy a car, a house with cash, you're gonna pay a lot right now, but you don't pay the debt service in the outer years. The right-hand column is if the vote is no, that's what the rates will look like. Now again, these are average customers. Everybody's rate is probably a little different, but the percentages can be applied to whatever you're currently paying. A couple things I want to note that's a little bit different. First of all, under the average monthly residential bill, we do have customers who live in the city of St. Louis who are not billed for their water usage. The water provider bills them based on the attributes of their homes. Because of a ruling by the Supreme Court of the state of Missouri, we bill wastewater the same way. So since we don't know how much is used, again, we don't know exactly how much water is used, we do use the data that's provided by the water provider. Every 4 years, we look and see if there should be some adjustment to the volumes we assign to those attributes. This year we did that study and found that we should. So if you are a MSD wastewater customer in the city of St. Louis, a residential customer, and you have an unmetered water service, the change in 2025, if there's bonding, instead of a 7% increase, there will be a 0.8% decrease in whatever your current bill is. Then after that, the increases will follow. That's to make a one-time adjustment for a change in the estimated water usage for the different attributes. The other thing that's part of the program, and this is all part of this, we do offer a customer assistance program. The way the system works is for those individuals based on family members whose annual income comes in at 2 times or less the poverty level. We have a program you can sign up for, your bill will be cut in half. There's also a similar one for elderly people like myself who are over 62 or over. If you qualify based on the income provisions, if your income is less than 2.5 times the poverty level, we have the same type of program. That the amount you pay will be cut in half for the wastewater program. Is the contact information not on this one? And then if there's any questions or comments, I think the Rate Commission can provide contact numbers if there's contacts you want, or you can ask staff if you have other questions about that. So Commissioner Jarls, that's the end of my presentation.
Very good, thank you. Are there any folks here that would like to speak concerning this? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Excuse me, commissioners, excuse me, we do have a sign-in sheet and we're taking the speakers in the order in which they signed in.
I'm sorry, my fault. Do we have the sign-in sheet?
We do. The first speaker is Jacqueline Brown.
Where is she at? Can you come on up and again state your name, address, and your concerns? Just go ahead. Yeah, just state from that side.
Good evening. My name is Jacqueline Brown, and I'm from Woodson Terrace, Guthrie Avenue, and it's near Bessemer. I am really concerned about this rate increase. And I'm concerned because over the years, MSD has raised has gotten these different raises, like $2 billion, and yet we're listening to what's going to be done. And these things haven't ever been done. And over the last year, from the flooding in U City and the sewer coming back, nothing is being done, but we're giving in more money. Our property value, you know, my property tax is unreal, especially with MSD, with the water, with everything is up, but nothing is being done. Every time this comes up, a way to, you're going to improve, but it doesn't get improved. And I'm concerned about the senior citizens. I'm concerned about the low income families. And when he just made the statement about how you can apply to be 2.5 below the poverty level, that doesn't make sense to me. You know what? And that's all I have to say. Okay.
Do you know anybody where they got flooded and MSD didn't want to pay? When it was
Yes, yes.
And they're talking about how they want to
Yes,
pay.
yes. And I'm concerned about the people that live in North County, where their homes are falling into the ditch or whatever. And the first thing MSD says is not our problem.
Did the same thing with University City as well? I'm just asking.
Yes. And that's my concern. If things were being done, if things were being handled, I wouldn't have a challenge with this. And then, and we know that these things need to be done, but we wait until like now things are eroding, and you're gonna put all this on us. Like my sewer bill right now is $39 a month, and it's just one person. And you using the figures 25% and 7%, but bottom line, my sewer bill is going to double.
And you didn't get the vote on it.
No, I hope what I'm saying is costing me more to let the poop out than to get a drink of water.
Chairman,
Thank you.
Can I provide some information and clarifications from the presentation?
Yes, so Mr. Holter, go ahead. You want to do it now?
Yeah, if I can, I think while we're here. So, one, if I said 2.5% less than the poverty level, I apologize. It's 2% above or 2.5% above. Anybody below that can qualify for the customer assistance program. And this is sometimes the hardest part for folks to understand. I talked about two proposals here. One for wastewater, which has nothing to do with University City flooding, which has nothing to do with creek erosion, any of that. It has to do with the separate sanitary system. Those are the stormwater services we're asking if the public wants us to help provide. There is no funding for that right now. That's the question we're asking. So when University City flooded, when there's creek erosion up in North County, MSD does not collect revenues to take care of those issues. They're not our assets. We're not the floodplain managers. We don't own the property, but we do have the right, and we're probably the right people district-wide to collect a fund to determine how to start going after those problems in cooperation with the municipal and county partners who have the management of those floodplains. So that's why you don't see any of that getting done, because we haven't collected any money for those activities. We tried in 2008, the Supreme Court turned us down. We went in 2019 to the voters, they voted it down. We're coming back again to see if you want MSD to be part of that solution. So those are just something on the presentation in response to the comments.
Commissioners, we now have up on the screens the contact information that Mr. Bolsher referenced in his presentation there for the public to see, so they don't have to quickly jot down anything based on his verbal presentation. The next speaker we have is signed up as Anton Dubinsky.
My name is Anton Dubinsky, and I'm calling about a property that I have in Olivet. Some of these questions, comments that I have already been pretty well either answered or addressed. But one of the things that irked me the most is having to pay a tax on how big my house is or how nice a car I drive. I think if you want to put a tax on there, it should be a flat tax and everybody pays the same. In 2012, the sewer bill at that property was roughly $14.20 per month. In present day, it's now $44.31. And if I understand you correctly, within 4 years, that's going to go to about 75.
It'll go up by whatever percentage I have shown. Those are just average customers. You can use those
Okay.
percentages on your bill.
Okay. I guess that's one of the things that irked me the most is this on the property tax. Based on how fortunate you may be. And then I had there's two taxes on there, one for MSD, one for Deer Creek, and you've answered that. So that's been addressed. And this tax increase or rate increase, is this forever? Or when's this project going to be paid for? You said 39? 20. Mr.
Yeah,
Walker.
I just want to come up, if I go up to the microphone to make sure everybody hears, do you mind if I,
Okay.
since you asked? So, we'll sort of stay up here, that's fine. I just want to make sure. So for the wastewater, the current end of the consent decree is 2039, and we have projects that last through then. So every 4 years, especially if the public decides to do bonding, we'll spend that borrowed money, and we'll have to do the next 4-year project somehow. That's why we come back every 4 years. On the stormwater, if stormwater passes, we anticipate, unless the public asks us differently, that the stormwater rates, those should be sufficient moving forward as we start tackling the issue. So you were asking about how long they last, so.
Right, well, I guess my question was, after this project is completed or paid for, is that tax going to go away or is it going to be dropped?
So the taxes for stormwater, I suspect that'll last forever. The rates themselves, once we get to that period, you will have debt service, but the huge project list will drop off. Again, 98% of the rate proposal, the work we're doing is not just regular O&M, it's in that consent decree. Those projects will drop off, that level of project will drop off the list, will be down to kind of normal operation and maintenance and renewal of systems. So a huge chunk of that will go off at the end of 2039.
And I guess I wasn't familiar about the rate commission. You said you're independent?
Yes, we're neither employees or paid by.
So do you perform an audit to see that the numbers that they've come up with
We
are
have,
accurate and there's...
we've hired professionals to look at their proposal.
Okay, so there's not going to be anything in there for pension funds or anything like that, or is that?
Oh, yes, it's up in there. It's up in there, and they can't say
Pension
this
funds,
not.
health and welfare, bonuses, is that included in this proposal?
Brian, do you want to?
No, so, I mentioned, so it's for all the wastewater costs, so the wastewater cost of operations is about 30% of our annual expenditure. So 30%, and that's for these next 4 years, is for the regular O&M, operation and maintenance of the system. So in other words, if we didn't have the capital program going on, if we didn't have the debt service, we would be spending 30% of the money we're proposing this time. So that money is in there as well. Increases in just O&M cost, inflation, fuel costs, those types of things.
And who sets those rates?
They're being set, they're in this rate proposal. Our O&M costs are in the rate proposal we have in front of them.
And does the general public have access to that?
I-
Does the
all-
public look at that?
Yeah, I think all those numbers are in the rate proposal.
And you can find that online if you go to the website.
Okay, I guess that's pretty much, I think you've addressed all the other things. Like I said, I didn't know there was a rate commission that
Has oversight of this?
We're here for your benefit.
That's right.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
And Commissioners, Mr. Dubinsky did have a handout, which I'm sure makes it into the record, is conveyed to the rest of the Rate Commission as part of this committee report.
Very good.
Our third speaker, and our final speaker signed up is Rick Wolf.
I guess my issue that I have with MSD is, I'm a landlord, I got houses, I've had stuff that's gotten backed up, that was in their district, and that, you know, if you ever try to get MSD to pay for anything, they'll argue and say, hey, it's not our fault, it's somebody else's fault. I had to have on a house, and I used to have 25 of these things. I've got houses where my MSD bill is $98, $100. And, you know, with me being a landlord, if I had to fix a house, and because codes have changed, I had to fix it. Nobody gave me any money. I mean, I'm not being funny. I'm serious. I mean, it might be may have to move an electric box or something like that. But what I'm saying to you, MSD has to hold some responsibility. They want us to pay for it. That's crap. And that's how I feel. I feel these bills are out of control. They don't provide water. They say they provide service. Well, they should. If you go to St. Charles has their own system. And they're half the price of what these guys are. I might be wrong. Maybe it's not quite half, but they're definitely cheaper than MSD. MSD, to me, you should be paying $98. $98. This bill used to be 2 months, like this gentleman was talking, and you can talk out both sides, and they said, we got a chance to vote on this. Somebody set the rate. I didn't get to vote on it. You didn't get to vote on it. Those are the facts. You got two choices. Either crap or piss. Those are your two choices on voting. And both those rates are high, but you guys need to take some responsibility. And then they talk about, okay, there's a fund that we might have for flooding services or whatever, if your house falls into a ditch, whatever. Well, if they run out of money, they ain't gonna pay for it. Well, I'm sorry, we don't have this. Everything he's always said here. If we're out of money, we can't pay for it. You should be responsible for it. I know when I had to do repairs on a house, if I wanted to rent a house, I had to move the utility box or whatever, I had to spend $20,000 on a house. I didn't cry to all these people and say, hey, I want money from you. You want money from us. The stuff you guys should be taking care of. Okay? And that's how I feel. And my view has changed. $98 for an MSD bill. You guys don't provide water, you don't provide electric, you don't provide cable. Well, we got these busted pipes because you guys don't take care of your stuff. That's how I feel. $98 bill. And that's going to go to what, 120? I'm done talking. I'm sorry I got upset, but this got silly. But you give us two choices. I'm never going to look at that and get an opinion. You're saying, oh, you're doing us a favor. That's not a favor. That's a rate. I'm sorry. That's how I feel.
Thank you for your comments.
Commissioners, Mr. Wolf is the last speaker who has signed up, and I see no other members of the public in the audience.
Okay. Again, I'll ask, is there anyone else here that'd like to speak on or before about this rate proposal? And again, we've got these cards. You can go online, you get a lot of information online about what's been going on with the commission, what's been going on with MSD, all the different exhibits, expert witnesses, what have you. You get a lot of information. Okay, are there any other rate commissioners present that have any questions or comments for MSD?
No additional questions, but I appreciate everyone's time tonight and coming out and giving your public input.
The Rate Commission staff will please announce those who have requested to speak. Those wishing to speak, please remember to state your name and address. So we've already gone through all of that. The next public hearing is scheduled for tomorrow, Tuesday, Thursday, June 27th at 5:30 p.m. The hearing will be held at the headquarters of Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. The address, MSD's headquarters, is 2350 Market Street, St. Louis, Missouri 63103. This time the public hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.